sinasabi, tayong mga Pilipino, wala talagang tutulong at magmamalasakit sa atin, kundi tayo rin kapwa Pilipino. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
The Honorable Ernest Junicio of the 1st District of Manila. We now proceed. The Honorable Alonto.
Thank you.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A'udhu billahi minasyaitanir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Magandang gabi po sa ating lahat at isang masayang Pasko sa ating pong lahat. Mr. Chair, I'd like to premise my questions on two grounds. First, Mr. Chair, I represent a community where it is well located within the operation of NGCP. I come from Lanao del Sur, 1st District, and as you know, NGCP is heavily invested and operated within my area. The generation, power generation comes from the lake. I think more than 50% of the supply of power supply to Mindanao, and even as far as Visayas, comes from the hydroelectric power supply that we generate from Lake Lanao, which is right outside my doorstep. Literally, I was actually living just near the lake. Secondly, Mr. Chair, the issue on whether or not there seems to be a apprehension on the issue of national security. This has been widely and exhaustively discussed 10 years ago, Mr. Chair. The late Senator Miriam Defensor came out with a very strong statement and even described this as a national power virus, no, ang pagkasabi po niya. That was 10 years ago. She came out with the position. I think the discussion was the possibility of maybe amending the IPIRA law. And the late Senator Miriam Defensor warned us that in terms of our public utilities, we as legislators should be more circumspect and should be more wary about allowing other foreign countries. And she's not only talking about China alone. She was talking about opening up the possibility of entering and to extend giving powers to international companies to probably manipulate or influence how we would run the national grid, and especially if it talks about energy sector and energy industry. So, Mr. Chair, I was listening to several members of this committee, and basically the 50% or more than 50% of the discussion revolves around the issue of national security. And I do not question the patriotism of each and every single person in this room. If we talk about patriotism and nationalism, we are all nationalists and we are all patriotic to some degree. But this is about business and this is about profit. So the issue and the fear that we may hear from my members, and just to borrow some of the words that were said during the course of this inquiry committee hearing, there was a word that was used, yung speculation. To my understanding, it could border into paranoia. Mr. Chair, I don't see this as something that should stay away from or distance ourselves from. In fact, the Constitution recommends, to my understanding, encourages us to embrace paranoia to some degree, to be speculative at some degree, to be apprehensive at some degree when issues and topics surround around the issue of national security. That is why, Mr. Chair, the Constitution, though we may enter into actively, the government or the state may enter into active business dealings with other foreign countries, it remains that the state should maintain ownership over our natural resources and national assets. That's how paranoid our Constitution is. That's how conservative our Constitution is. Now, that is how apprehensive our Constitution is. And the Constitution even maintains the power of the state. Those companies who are applying to do business using public utilities to exploit our natural resources to the House of Representatives and to some extent to Senate. That's why you have the NGCP now requesting or applying for your franchise because it's a state power that maintains by the Constitution to the House of Representatives. That's why, Mr. Chair, this honorable committee is hearing the franchise of NGCP. That's how apprehensive, that's how paranoid, that's how conservative, and that's how speculative our Constitution. So when it comes to issue on national security, in fact, Mr. Chair, I'd like to state that we're talking here about power and energy. Constitution is very, very specific. Article 12, Section 2. It says, all natural resources, in particular, potential energy, are owned by the state, period. That's how the Constitution language the powers of the state to be maintained, this natural asset, within the grasp of the state, Mr. Chair. So when it comes to speculation, I think that's the very, very basic why we are having this discussion, because all of us have our own speculations. And I myself, I would say, medyo paranoid po ako pagdating sa national security, Mr. Chair, because the Constitution wants us to embrace that attitude because we will not be dealing with actual threat. We are also be warned about the potential threat. That's why we should not be reactive. We should always be proactive. That's what I guess the power of this honorable committee is. This is legislation at work. We should be proactive in trying to avoid any potential threat that may alarm us in the future, especially if it concerns about national security. Mr. Chair, having said that, I'd like to ask a few questions to NGCP. Because in order to address speculations again of a potential threat to our national security, perhaps I'd like to ask how NGCP able to acquire or able to at least subcontracts some of the projects and or services that you require for your company to be able to service the supply, transmission of electric power to our community. So I would like to ask Mr. Chair, NGCP directly, these are just simple questions po, Mr. Chair. Tama po ba na you procure services and goods sa mga ibang companies through a competitive bidding? Is that correct? If anyone from NGCP, my fraternity Brad, Attorney Ronald Concepcion just winked at me, Mr. Chair. So,
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, may we allow Attorney Concepcion to respond to my question? Since he's a fraternity Brad, he could be as honest as he could be. So,
Attorney,
Mr. Chairman,
a Brad will never lie to a Brad.
we have,
Mr. Concepcion, you are a lawyer?
yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So, Attorney Ronald Concepcion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Procurement of goods and services in NGCP follows a very public and deliberative process. Public in the sense that we open the bids and we open the procurement to bidders, who have previously been accredited with us, who have the track record, the performance of which have been already evaluated by NGCP. And then the bids that have been qualified are to be determined or to be evaluated by what we call the accreditation, bid evaluation, and awards committee. This committee will now determine whom or which companies have the best offer to the corporation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Mr. Chair, may I direct? I know I don't want to be biased because this conversation between fraternity Brad, I could be biased. So I would like to redirect my question to Attorney Sagayo, if you may, sir. Yes. My follow-up question. Thank you, Brad. So,
Welcome.
meaning to say, jumping off from the response of Attorney Concepcion, Attorney Sagayo, so ibig sabihin po, yun ngayong may bids and procurement committee po kayo, tama ho ba?
Tama po, Mr. Chairman.
And I would assume that the bids and